What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast, Happy Hour Hoops, presented by Trainwreck Sports and brought to you by our lovely sponsor, WinStreaks. You guys know all about it by now. It's the best sports app out there. It is 100% free to play. WinStreaks is 100% free to play. I always like to reiterate that you make up to 5 picks per day on the NBA, NHL, college basketball, baseball is right around the corner, NFL when it's in season. 100 players win cash prizes every week up to $2,000. Weekly contest runs from Monday to Sunday, obviously every week. Again, no deposits ever, guys. 100% free to play. Refer your friends and win an additional 50% of what they win. And never forget to use our code HHH when you sign up and start winning your cash prizes. And I say never forget to use our code because if you guys use our code HHH, you'll be automatically lodged into our giveaways that we're doing today. We're doing one, and then in the future. So anytime you sign up, use code HHH, and you will be a part of our giveaways. Jake has a wheel here. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening, it's a beautiful wheel. There's some green in there, some light yellow, some mustard yellow. It looks very cool. We have all the names of the people who used our code from the last contest and this contest. And we are giving away a $10 Game Time gift card. So without further ado, Jake will spin the wheel here. It's always so suspenseful.
Whoa. This thing's going crazy.
Yeah. We got a little lag spin going. And Dez dropped it. If your name is Dez, dropped it on the WinStreakzApp. Congratulations. You have won a $10 Game Time gift card courtesy of WinStreaks. So that is the power of using our code HHH, guys. Go ahead and download the WinStreakzApp. Always free, 100% free. 5 picks a day, all sports. Accumulate those points and win the cash prizes. WinStreaks, guys. Go download the app.
I'm assuming Des dropped is a Cowboys fan, right?
Yeah, right. Has to be. No, that's a great nickname. I noticed that when I was checking our referrals one day. I was like, I like that name. So congratulations, Des dropped it. $10 Game Time gift card, courtesy of WinStreaks. We love it. We love partnering with WinStreaks. They're the best. Go download the app, fellas. Basketball, I feel like the NBA world has been crazy since we last recorded. Yeah. You have side stories of drama. You just have amazing basketball. The MVP race is spicier than ever. We're going to have our spirited MVP discussion at the end of today's episode. We touched on that last week, teased it heavy. We have a lot of opinions to throw at each other. We'll see what sticks. And we have a crazy game to discuss from last night as well, which we'll get into before the MVP debate. It's funny because Jake and Steve, you guys had the Cavs Mavs matchup. Steve, me and you got Mavs Celtics Friday.
I know, it's a gauntlet, man. Right? They had in Indiana, then in Cleveland, tonight on a back-to-back in Toronto, and then Friday in Boston. I mean, it's a gauntlet. I'm hoping they can come out 2-2, and it's not good because they started 0-2 thanks to Max Strus ripping the heart out. But we'll talk about that later. I don't want to get into that. Before we dive into the news, Donnie. Before we dive into the news, because we got a lot of juicy storylines to get to, I do want to talk about, everyone's talking about the Mavs-Cavs game. I do want to talk about another game that caught my eye yesterday. The Detroit Pistons are no longer in solo last place. They got to win on the road. Tough win, big fourth quarter against the Chicago Bulls. Bulls playoff. Now the play-in getting a little sketchy there, but luckily for the Bulls, the other teams are kind of dropping up. But the Pistons are no longer in solo last, which we said that there was going to be the Pistons are not going to be this like historically 8-win, 7-win team. They were playing close in a lot of games. They're no longer in solo last. They're tied with the Washington Wizards. So the Pistons, I remember we said, I think a little over a month ago that they were going to be over, I think 10.5 wins. Yeah. Right now the Pistons, I think 9 wins, tied with the Wizards. And it looks like those Washington Wizards are going to be in the cellar soon because The pool party didn't work this year. The
No.
pool party didn't work. But
And
I have to shout out to the Pistons.
Yeah, shout out the Pistons. They should have had another win the other night against the Knicks.
Yeah, they should have.
Yes, they should have.
I mean,
Monty Williams doesn't really have a leg to stand on as far as complaining about anything because he's had done such a horrific job coaching. But he said it was the worst call of the season. I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, his guy literally got tackled and he lost the ball. So, yeah, I mean, the Pistons could have easily been at 10 wins already if that Knicks game didn't get robbed from them. Also, you brought up the Wizards. So hilarious that I know, I'm sure you guys have seen it, all our listeners, and probably the two of you too, but that Kuzma tweet from a couple months ago.
Oh, it's aging like fine wine, man.
And he basically quote tweeted something about the Pistons being bad. I forget who was like close to losing to them that night. And honestly, might have been the Celtics.
It's the Celtics. They were down. It was when the Celtics
they were down huge in the first half, right? And then they came back. And Kuzma quote tweeted it and said, "At this point, it's just don't be that team." And now the Wizards are 9-49, and the Pistons are 9-49, just cuddling at the bottom of the East.
And I haven't looked, and I don't even know if it's offered, but I would say to be like the worst team in the NBA, I think the Wizards are very heavily favored at this point. They have to be.
Yeah, I mean I don't even know what's going on in Washington.
It's bad. It's really bad. The only thing I will say is, I love to give shout outs to the guys that no one really truly appreciates. Tyus Jones and Denny Avdia have been balling. I will get the Wizards have been an absolute disaster, and obviously you're not going to ever win a lot of games when those are the two guys you're bringing up. But Tyus Jones has been playmaking unbelievable, and Denny Avdia has been, in my opinion, one of the most improved players this year. He's not going to get a lot of love in the most improved, right, because he's on the Wizards. The Wizards are a 9-win team, and there's so many other guys, including like Kobe White, Sengun is another one. Obviously Tyrese Maxey have just stepped their game up this year. But I gotta give. We're gonna trash the Wizards to start today. I gotta give Denny Avdia and Tyus Jones a little bit of love.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially on a team that obviously we don't talk about all that much, and for good reason. I mean, they're doing it to themselves, but it's okay to show some love sometimes. News and notes. Let's get into it, guys. Chris Paul returned to the Warriors lineup on Tuesday night. I don't know if you guys listen, but I think the Sunday podcast of the I don't know why his name's escaping me right now. Ryan Russillo and Bill Simmons.
Yeah.
They were talking about the Warriors in a kind of interesting way. Clay obviously coming off the bench, and Clay's been awesome since he started coming off the bench. Kuminga has stepped up huge in the second half of the season. Chris Paul coming back to run that bench unit. You wonder if they keep Clay and Chris Paul on the bench. And now all of a sudden, right before we record, Steve Kerr announced that Andrew Wiggins is gone with a personal matter, not knowing when he's going to return. So we have this Wiggins saga that's been going on for a couple of years now, where he just, goes absent or takes time off, and we never really know why. So that happened again. So right when the Warriors start winning a few games, the bench looks a little better. Starting lineup looks a little more improved. Now we have Wiggins out on a personal matter. So what do you guys think about the Warriors, the Clay bench move and Chris Paul coming back?
I'd be terrified to see him in the playoffs, right? I mean, this is a team with experience, number one. This is a team that's done it many, many times. They still have kind of the same core. I know they're getting older. I know they're past their prime, but Curry's still having one hell of a year. Kuminga is another guy, like I talked about some guys, for most improved player. Not going to get a lot of love in terms of the votes, but he's someone that I think has been one of the most improved from last year to this year, especially. And it seems like everyone's kind of finally fitting in with their role. I didn't think Clay would like coming off the bench, but like as you said, Donnie, he's been playing some of his best basketball off the bench, and they're kind of really all buying into it. Also, Braden Podminski, right? No one thought this rookie was going to have an impact, and he's been one of the most impactful players on this team this year. And as a guy who's a fan of another team in the West who's right around there, you really don't know from seeds like 4 to 9 in the West right now. Who knows at this point where these teams are going to fall, where they're going to end up. I would be terrified to be matched up against the Warriors in the play-in. I'd be absolutely terrified. You're telling me like it's Steph Curry who's still playing like he's in his prime. The other one may be a little past their prime, but they're playing as a team. They're starting to get healthy. We'll see what happens with Wiggins. But at this point, too, it's like, do they need Wiggins with the way Kuminga's been playing? I mean,
and the way Wiggins has been playing, I guess, right? Like he's
yeah.
like 2 years ago when they won the finals in 2022, like Wiggins was a huge part of that team and a huge part of their success. Honestly, ever since then, if it's because of the personal matter, you feel for the guy, but
right
at the same time, what the Warriors are displayed of Andrew Wiggins has not been great.
No, and like this is a team I just don't want to see, right? I think they're 8-2 in their last 10 now. You get Chris Paul back, and I know everyone's going to make the jokes about Chris Paul choking in the playoffs, but it's a different circumstances here. He's not option 1, 2, or 3 on this team. Like he's just a guy who's, gonna help make an impact, help, do a little bit of the playmaking and take a little bit off of Curry, maybe let Curry, come off the ball in certain situations if they want to play small or if they want to switch things up. And also, too, if Chris Paul comes off the bench with Clay, I mean, can you imagine that luxury, right? Chris Paul and Klay Thompson coming off the bench for your team. I mean, this is a team that's really scary for me. And it's tough because I know we talked about how we thought this was going to be the Warriors' kind of downfall at the start of it, and it looked that way. And now that everything's trending in the other direction, and for any team in the West, I don't think you want to see this Warriors team.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the time of the year that they wanted Chris Paul for too when they acquired him. Like you want him for this stretch run. Yep. Like it's been weird that he's been in and out of the lineup, and they've had obviously the struggles throughout the season, but as we're talking about here, they've steadied the pace, and this is what you wanted him for, to come in. I love him on that bench unit. I love having Clay. Like it's not only like Clay is playing well, and you hope that he can keep it up with the struggles that he's had through this year, but it kind of like put that chip back on his shoulder. Like once they finally did it, like he relented. He was so against it all year coming off the bench, it seemed like, and he was like,
he got butthurt when someone asked him about it.
Draymond's yelling at him in the locker room about it and everything else. And now it's just kind of like, well, fuck it. I need to go and play my best right now. And it's not like he won't be in closing lineups when they need him to be or anything like that. Yeah. But like you're saying, Steve, Chris Paul and Klay Thompson coming in as your bench unit with the starters that they can throw out there. And you have Curry, Curry can so uniquely carry like an offense if you have guys that can play around him. Like I feel like it's, there's guys like Luka and Jokic and everything else who carry offense, but it's so unique with Curry that you don't need a lot of like firepower per se, because his gravity, which is like a meme term at this point, but it makes so much sense because he draws so much attention to himself and stretches out the floor so much. You can afford to have those guys on your bench lineup, and then dealing with a lot of these teams in the West, like the West, it's strong, but it feels wide open when you look at the playoff circumstances. And if you match like the Warriors up with the Wolves or the Thunder in a first round series, I'm gonna feel pretty good about the Warriors' chances. I don't know if I'll pick them to win those series, but the West doesn't feel like as set in stone. Like we're gonna have some surprise if they're depending on what the matchups are for the playoff series. There's gonna be some surprise results, much like it was last year. Honestly, the way we ended up. So Chris Paul coming back, I think he was a plus 17 last night. This is what he's in there for, the stretch run. It's going to be exciting to see how the Warriors kind of close the stretch of this year so far.
Yeah, definitely interesting. When you just said it, I think a Wolves Warriors series would be sick because you don't really think that, as improved as Anthony Edwards is, you don't really think that he could keep up with Steph as far as how much Steph affects a playoff series. But then on the flip side, like you don't really think the Warriors' size matches up well at all with the Wolves. Like the Wolves have that huge advantage in that series. Like what do Draymond and Looney do with Towns and Gobert for a full series?
Yeah, I definitely undersized compared to them, but I'll tell you what, we've seen this story before with the older Warrior teams, right? Where they spread, you're going to spread out Gobert, and also that like Kevon Looney and Draymond Green are two guys that step up big time and come playoffs where they play like they're 7-2. And we've seen this every time. And obviously Curry gets all the love. When KD was on the team, he got all the love. Clay, obviously Wiggins with his run. But I look at each like playoff like runs for the Warriors or championship runs and just look at what Draymond and Kevon Looney do. Both like on the glass and also defensively down low. It's actually very, very impressive. And it's one of those things with the Warriors where honestly, for me, outside of maybe the Denver Nuggets, I think they have a pretty, not favorable, but at least even matchup in any potential Western Conference Western Conference playoff series. The only one that really I think is like is the Denver Nuggets, because the Denver Nuggets will they'll stretch the floor and they'll let you.
Well, and we saw it the other night, right? And Jokic just career stats against the Warriors
are disgusting.
Yeah,
they're disgusting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
So that's the only one.
Or not.
If I'm a Warriors fan, I'd be like, that's the matchup. I don't want any of the other teams. Honestly, sign me up.
Yeah, because the on paper stuff goes out the window when Steph's in the playoffs. It really does.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll see with the Warriors ever changing. Wiggins gone now, CP3 back, Kuminga obviously stepping up huge, like Steve mentioned. These next few notes in the news and notes section, just kind of bullet points, keep you guys aware. If you're not as tuned in as the ultra NBA fans. Trae Young had surgery on his left hand. He's going to be out about 4 weeks. Surgery was a success as far as we know, and the Hawks are kind of just coasting.
Perfectly mid. It was a couple weeks ago. What was the stat?
It's still happening. I believe it's 751 and 751.
Insane.
And that goes back 18 years, bro.
It's wild.
I saw. I really want to give this guy a shout out because he's awesome. He's a big Nuggets fan. I'll try to clip this and put his name in, but it's escaping me right now. But this is where I got the information from. Joe Johnson was 25 when when this record of mid started for the Atlanta Hawks. So it's like it's not like you can blame Trae Young or DeJounte or this group or even the group before them for the average record that they've had for so long. But the Hawks, they're 10th. So, they got the last play-in spot right now. We'll see.
And they're 10th by 4 games. They're 10th by 4 games. So this is something where we're talking about they're just, the mid team. I think they're just going to stick at the 10. It doesn't look like Brooklyn or Toronto wants to make a push to get there, right? And obviously those are the only 2 teams that can push them. The other 3 are pretty much mathematically eliminated at this point. Like, obviously, they still have a chance, but the Hornets aren't making a push, and the Wizards and Pistons are be lucky if they get to 15 wins. So it's crazy. And then obviously the teams above them, right? Chicago is the 9, and then it jumps up, I think, another like 4 or 5 games to Indiana. So it's like they're stuck in the 9-10 matchup. It's just a matter, are you going to play in Chicago or are you playing in Atlanta? Like, I think in the East, you could just lock in that final 9-10. Because I'm looking at it right now, I don't see Brooklyn or Toronto making a run, and I don't see Chicago or Atlanta falling out of the play-in. So it's just a matter of who's going to be home.
5 through 8 are separated by a half game.
Yeah,
Magic and Pacers are 13.5 back. Heat and Sixers are 13 back.
But Indiana, right, at 8 has like 5 or 6 games, right, on Chicago.
5.5 on Chicago.
Yeah. So it's a
year doesn't need to exist, really. Like, they could just they could like have it. That was the one thing they talked about. JVC, that Chicago team, they are feisty.
They are feisty.
Last night,
I love Kobe White, bro. I'll give JBC a little treat there. I love Kobe White anyway. I was gonna say we. I assume you guys like him too.
Oh yeah, he's so much fun to watch. And I'll tell JBC this too, because I know I was a little mean at the start of this episode, bringing up the Pistons. But I'll tell you this, JBC, it's gonna be Chicago versus Atlanta. Regardless of where that game is, I'm taking Chicago. And if I lose, I lose. And I probably will. Because Trae Young will probably be back, and he'll probably just put up stupid numbers. But if it's Chicago, Atlanta, which it's going to be, I will be all in on Chicago for that game. I will give you that, JB.
You're a good guy.
The Hawks should have Trae Young back for playing time. If they don't fall out of that, which we don't think they will. They should be there. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see with the Hawks and Trae Young when he's back. Kevin Durant, since the last time we recorded, moved to 9th all time on the scoring list. So, I mean, we talked about how good KD is, right? Back a few months ago when he was talking about why am I not in the GOAT conversation. We had a lot of discourse about that. This is just another thing, adding to his resume. securely in the top 10 of all-time scoring list now, and it doesn't seem to be done yet. So shout out Kevin Durant. Something else that's happened since we last recorded: Pelicans Heat fight. I mean, there's a couple scraps since the last time we recorded.
Yeah.
This one was intense. Jose Alvarado, I put this down wrong in the notes, but Jose Alvarado and Thomas Bryant suspended 3 games. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Butler and Najee Marshall suspended 1 game. It was pretty crazy. I believe Jovic was suspended a game as well, and then the next game that they were all suspended, Jimmy Butler had a dinner, and all his guys who were suspended with him were watching the Heat game together, which was pretty funny.
You gotta love Jimmy Butler. You just gotta love Jimmy
being
Butler.
Jimmy. I quote tweeted and said probably not something you should be doing as a 6th seed, but then I put in parentheses, now this is hilarious.
Did you see Jimmy in the Fall Out Boy video today?
I did.
Full emo Jimmy.
And Shaq came late to the TNT set last night with the Jimmy Butler haircut from Picture Day. He lost a bet with Candace Parker, man. I believe, and he showed up with the bangs. So, yeah, I mean, Jimmy, even when the Heat are having, I don't want to say a down year because I'll blink and they'll be the 2 seed, but they're not living up to expectations. I think that's fair. 13 games back, 5 seed right now, but Jimmy finds a way to stay relevant and keep the people entertained, if you will. That's Jimmy Butler.
Are you worried if this is like a 4-5 Heat right next or something, whoever they play, and the Heat, let's say, win that first series? Are you worried about Miami this year? Because I know they're always the team that gives the Celtics a war of a playoff series. And right now, I think the Celtics look unstoppable. But we've seen this story with the Heat before. They start trending in the right direction. And are you worried about the Heat this year? Or is this different?
I think every Celtics fan in the back of your mind, you're probably, I think out of all of the, I'm not worried about a team in the East right now. I can comfortably say that. But I think if there is one and we were matched up with them in the second round or the Eastern Conference Finals again, if it's the Eastern Conference Finals again and we have to see the Heat, that, they're in the back of your head, yes, I feel like I can confidently say a little bit worried, but it just feels different this year, man. I just think the Celtics have too many answers for that group. I personally think the Heat got a little worse in the offseason. Mm-hmm. And I just think they would be overwhelming. But, I can't fully say I have no worries about them. I think Spoelstra and Jimmy being there alone is enough. Just because Spoelstra, as good as Mazzulla has been, and he has the highest winning percentage out of any coach in NBA history. But, he still doesn't have the experience that Spo does. We know how Spo can draw shit up, and Jimmy's Jimmy. So a little bit. That's my final answer. A little bit worried about the Heat.
I don't think you should be worried about anybody in the East. If the Celtics don't make the finals, it's something catastrophic happened. Yeah. That's the thing.
KP probably got hurt.
You look at all the other teams in the East right now, they are a level ahead. I don't think they're a level ahead of several West teams, but I do think they're a level ahead of all those East teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it'd take maybe 2 injuries for the Celtics to not come out of the East.
I don't know. My biggest concern, injuries obviously is one thing, especially if it's Tatum or Brown or anything like that. Even Porzingis would change the dynamic of that team. It's just the shoot. What worries me about this, and we're going into a Celtics conversation, but that's fine. We wanted to talk about some contender stuff. The thing that worries me about the Celtics is just how much they are a jump shooting team. And I know that the Warriors kind of dispelled that notion. They also have the greatest shooter of all time on that team. Yeah. We've seen these teams get cold in the past, the Rockets missing 27 in a row to the Warriors and other things like that. And there's good defensive teams in the East, whether it's Cleveland or whether it's the Knicks or anything like that, who can drag you into those games. And then we're talking late game Celtics where, I'm sure Dunny's tired of hearing about late game Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown offense, but that's what it comes down to, rather than a lot of situations where they've been blowing teams out. And the net rating shows that. The net rating there.
They're net ratings historically good.
Yeah, it's top 10 in NBA history for net rating right now. So that's what it is. They've been blowing a lot of teams out. Go ahead, Steve.
But the only thing I'll counter with your point, Jake, I get with the hot shooting teams. I know the Celtics shoot as many threes as anyone. I think they shoot the most threes in the NBA. Is you can get away with that when the Celtics 1 through 5 is all great defenders, right? They're all. incredible defenders. And it's one of those things where the Celtics, unlike these other, teams that would just chuck up a bunch of outside shots, hot shooting threes, and even in the fourth quarter when, sometimes either they're blowing teams out or their offense isn't as crisp as it is. And I would argue kind of the opposite this year, where I think the Celtics offense, when they needed to in games in the fourth quarter this year, has been night and day from
like
last year.
night. Even last night, they just closed. They were just like, no, Philly, see you later, guys. We're closed.
Where other guys will step up too.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just Tatum and Brown show. Derek White has had so many fourth quarters this year.
Yeah.
Where it's like, dude, this guy, like if you just had like a casual fan just watch the fourth quarter who hasn't watched the NBA in 5 years and say who's the best player on the team, they'd be like, oh, it's that bald guy.
Yeah.
It's that bald guy running around like he's clearly the best. But that's the thing with the Celtics is I get it. There's a lot of good defensive teams in the East. The Celtics are the best defensive team.
Yeah.
So they can get away with these cold shooting streaks. And it's just one of those things where something would have to happen. And I'm not, even if all five stay healthy, I don't think they don't come out of the East. But to lose a game, I think in some of these series, it would take an out of their mind type of performance from, some of these opposing players. Like Giannis would have to do, some of the games he's had in the house, or Dame would have to have one of those where he's not missing and he's pulling up from the parking lot type of games to just, I think, make it a game against the Celtics. Like just watching them right now, I when they are healthy, when they are rolling, I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't care that they shoot 45 threes. I really don't. They go cold and they miss 10 threes. It doesn't matter because the other team probably only gained 2 points on them.
I think the 3-point shooting thing is a super fair argument, Jake, from you. And I know you don't have the same sentiment as some media personalities. The only thing that bothers me about the 3-point argument is like Stephen A, Kendrick Perkins, like the guys on ESPN will spend like a whole 30-minute segment about how that's the Celtics' biggest problem, and it's gonna show down the road, and you can't live like this. They quite literally can live like this, bro. Yes. They're 46-12. They definitely can live like this. They have been. And it's funny, Jake, you betcha that. They did win by 18 last night and went 5 of 22 from 3. So, they are capable. But I do see what you're saying, because
it's a matchup more than anything else. Like if it gets into a series where the pace slows down and everything else, and there is a defense.
I think Pacers and Cavs, I think if you go cold against, especially those teams right now, just like you mentioned, the pace. Obviously, Pacers haven't been great as of late, but like Pacers, Cavs,
they
even
Bucks, in bunches.
Yeah, even Bucks with Dame and Giannis, like you just mentioned, Steve. Like if you have a cold night and you get down big against one of those squads, I think that the 3-point shooting can lose you a game in a series.
That's fair.
I don't think it can lose you a series overall, though.
I truly think that the basketball world needs a Cavs Celtics Eastern Conference Finals. And I think that I'm not saying that as the Cavs end here. The Cavs are the best and most well-rounded team. And that when we're talking about the starting fives that can match up with the Celtics defensively, they're not going to be able to stop them every game. That's for sure. And I guarantee you it's going to be like a 2-0 lead quick and then go back to Cleveland. We'll see how it goes. Those teams will dominate at home in that series. But when you're looking at matching up defensively, that's the only team that I think that can give them a lot of trouble unless Embiid comes back and he's healthy. Like that's the thing. Yeah. We're going to go into Embiid and what's going to happen with him. Like if he's healthy and comes back, the Sixers they're as real as we were talking about earlier in the year. But and it feels like if it is the Cavs, that feels like it's going to be cathartic for the Celtics. This Celtics team who like that's the original sin of the Jason Tatum Celtics is that 7-game series against LeBron, and then you come back to this like they're back in this position. They've beaten the Heat. They've lost to the Heat too, but they've beaten the Heat. They've beaten up the Sixers a ton. I don't think the Knicks. I like the Knicks, but I just don't think that they're going to have enough firepower when it comes down to the playoff series. It does feel like the Cavs are that best set up team. We're going to talk about the Bucks in a little bit too, but they still feel like they're a level below this Celtics team at this point. And the Cavs pull some. I don't know how that would look in a series like that. So it just feels like the Celtics have a lot of answers. And like you were saying, Steve, it's because of that starting lineup as much as anything else. Like the shooting is one thing, but it's not just like a bunch of shooting specialists on this team that are getting hot all the time. Right. It's just a great starting lineup. One of the best starting lineups and most talented we've seen since probably that Warriors team, honestly. And that might have been a more high end with the way Curry and Durant were going there, but the depth in the starting lineup and looking at it, there's not a single hole in it. So, but with Embiid coming, this is what I wanted to get into here and transition into our Embiid talk. There's been a lot of talk about Embiid going both ways, back and forth, a lot of speculation, Dunny.
Yeah, I solely put this in here. We kind of chatted a little bit about it before we hopped on, but like the speculation on whether Embiid's going to come back, and then guys like Stephen A and Jamal Crawford giving their 2 cents, like as if that matters at all. Like Stephen A saying if Embiid's 75%, he'd still, take that and play him 15 to 20 minutes a game to try to help your, playoff push or whatever. Okay, well, who's going to play Joel Embiid if the doctors say that he's 75%? They're going to wait. They're going to wait. You're not putting Joel Embiid, the guy who would clearly be the MVP. Well, I mean, he was on pace to be the MVP.
He was the clear favorite before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Clear state favorite.
Clear favorite before he got hurt. Like, obviously you want him back, but a guy who's, he's not young anymore. He has an injury history. If the doctors tell you he's 75%, they're not rushing Embiid back. So that's not even in the cards. Then you have people saying that it would be irresponsible to bring him back at all. My whole thing putting this in here, I think it's too much speculation. Let's wait a week and see what the consensus is. I'm sure we're going to get a official report soon. The rumored reports is that he will return at some point this season, or if it comes down to the playoffs and the Sixers make it there, then he could come back then. Where are you guys at? I mean, obviously, if they want to the Sixers want to do any damage, they obviously need him.
Right.
But this, I mean, I got to watch the Sixers up close last night without Embiid. It's literally just Maxey and.
Yeah.
This isn't like a crazy take to feel good about being right on, but I still hate the Buddy Hield trade. I mean, he's just not enough of a consistent scorer for that to move the needle for you, even without Embiid. Like, I just don't. I didn't understand it at the time. I don't really understand it now. Just quick thought from each of you guys. What do you guys think about the Sixers without Embiid?
I will say with Buddy Hield, I think he has been playing all right for the Sixers this year. I really do. I don't think he's been in the pure scorer, but I think he's been playing better overall, like as an all-around basketball player than he had in Indiana. But with Embiid,
I just don't think he moves the needle enough.
I agree. Yeah. Well, with Embiid, though, the big thing, Dunny, is that I think the Sixers have to see when he can come back, right? If it's worth to bring him back. And then if it's like, okay, he can come back at a certain time, there's going to be pressure on this organization to maybe go a little earlier than they want to, because the Sixers have fallen out a lot quicker than we thought in the East. They're now sitting as the 6th seed. They only have half a game from the 6 to the 7 and 8, which is Orlando and Indiana, two really fun, exciting young teams that are, kind of going the opposite direction of the 76ers right now. And
Magic are 7-3 in their last 10. Pacers are 6-4 in their last 10.
And if you're looking at the scenario here, we're talking about playing. We're talking about a playoff series, right? 7-game playoff series guaranteed, or you're in the play-in and you got to win some games. So in my opinion, if that starts to get a little, I mean, it's close as it's going to get right now, but if they start to fall out a little bit and it's like, all right, it almost looks like they're going in the play-in, I think there's pressure to bring back Embiid earlier than where I think what the Sixers had hoped when this injury happened is bring him back for the playoffs. But we haven't really heard too much. It's all just everyone speculating. So I can't really speak on that. But if we hear any news of like, okay, Embiid's starting to look like he's going to return at so-and-so date, I would say that the 76ers are going to feel a lot of pressure that we got to get that 6th seed. And we might have to risk playing Embiid earlier than we wanted to secure that 6th seed. That's kind of how I feel. I don't know when the timeline would even be of projected of when he would come back. But our thought when this first came out, guys, was that, okay, he's probably not going to play the rest of the regular season, right? I think we can agree that's kind of how the three of us felt, that he's probably going to come back at the start of the playoffs. And we thought Philly would probably fall around maybe a 5-6. Playing, I don't think we thought was in the cards. And right now, it's like especially with Philly fans and the way these Philly teams have been before. I mean, at that point, if you fall into the plane, is it worth bringing Embiid back? Is it even worth? Like, you gotta take a look and be like, is he even healthy enough to give us something? Because I think if that's the case, I think Philly's going to rush it. I really do.
Yeah, I think as crazy as it sounds, it might depend on matchups too when you get to that point.
True.
But yeah, it sucks, man. I did think Philly would be a little bit more competitive. It doesn't seem that way. I think obviously to get Healed, which was my point at the time, is I think they traded away some of their toughness. I know, the Pat Bev trade and Daniel House Jr., like those deals weren't directly correlated with the Healed trade, but they kind of pushed a lot out at the deadline. I thought some pretty good impact players are just guys on the team who kind of had that Philly attitude that they shipped out. And obviously Joel makes the biggest difference when you're watching the Sixers, but there's something missing more than Joel last night, I felt, when I was watching them.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. They're struggling heavy. I would not be surprised at all if the Magic and Pacers both pass them. So someone else besides Max is going to need to step up for them. Last two things in the notes here. Knicks were denied their protest on February 12th, the loss against the Rockets. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. They were just protesting some bad calls that happened at the end of the game that cost them the game, they thought. The league denied it, though, so they will – I saw someone quote tweet this actually and said the league actually made up for it with the Pistons game the other night with the no call. So maybe all is fair for the Knicks there. And then our last thing, the Bucks have been on a little bit of a surge since starting bad with Doc Rivers. I mean, they played some bad teams. They beat up on the Hornets last night. But the bigger story here with the Milwaukee Bucks is Dame had some interesting quotes today, one of which was about my Boston Celtics. He said, I thought we was going to be how Boston is right now. So basically he, had higher expectations for the Bucks. He didn't start particularly great at the beginning of this season. And then I'm going to try to find the exact quote. The other thing that I was talking about, because Dame just seems like he's in his feels and it sucks. I feel bad for him in some capacity, but he basically said he feels lonely in Milwaukee. He's definitely lonely since all of his family and friends still live in Portland. He talked about how all he does is practice, play video games, and then watch boxing videos on YouTube. So, I mean, Dame, one of us, it's a good example that these athletes are humans like the rest of us and have feelings and can get down when situations change. But I don't know. I just don't think it's two great quotes you want to hear from your star point guard that you brought in to after you shipped out your star point guard who you won a championship with.
Right.
Where are you guys at with the Bucks? They're a very confusing team, from the coaching to the Dame and Giannis together and everything in between.
Well, it feels like that we talked about it when Doc came in for Adrian Griffin, and it felt like it was player driven, and there was chatter on podcasts and everything else since then that it was more of a Dame thing with Adrian Griffin than it was a Giannis thing. So Dame is getting what he wants out of this. Like, he got the coach out that obviously he wanted Terry Stotts there, and that went poorly in the preseason. I think that's what's kind of started Dame's issues with this run in the first place. But they got Adrian Griffin out of there after the team was performing well. Whatever he wasn't clicking with Dame wants to put that blame on the coaching staff rather than himself in any way or whatever, or anybody else on the team. That's fine, but now you have to live with that. And he's out here now talking with Chris Mannix and complaining about being, what life is it like in Milwaukee. Milwaukee's one of the smallest markets in the NBA. I'll tell you what, there's not a lot to do in Milwaukee. It's kind of just it's a small town. It's a nice town, good place, but there's not like a buzzing downtown. Just you go to the lake, but it's been cold, like not a lot to do right now. And I think that's what Giannis loves about Milwaukee is that, and the thing with Giannis we always talked about was Giannis, the story of Giannis is that he literally came from, being homeless, jumping around, all this other stuff, and now he's in the NBA. So coming to Milwaukee was the biggest city he had ever lived in his life. He has a lot more of appreciation for the city of Milwaukee and everything else. Dame wanted to go to Miami. Like, we know that was a fact. Dame wanted to go. If he was leaving Portland and leaving all his family and friends, he wanted to go to Miami. And there's obvious reasons why guys want to go to Miami in the league. Like, we don't have to get into all the reasons. We know all those reasons that guys want to go there. So it's a stark contrast from what he probably had in his mind. That being said, Dame just kind of has lost a step, guys. Like, that's all it really is. Like, he's a small guard who has lost a step. And we see this happen throughout NBA history. I know since this podcast has been in existence, I've always been wary of the small guards and how they've aged and everything else.
Yep.
And Dame is losing that step now. And that's what I think the biggest thing is. I think he's really dealing with that more than anything else. And there's a lot of things that he's compartmentalizing and trying to place blame in other places because he doesn't want to look at it and be like, I'm not the guy I used to be. But Dame's not the guy he used to be. And the All-Star performance, was him coming out and being like, I deserve to be here, putting that chip on his shoulder. Sure, nobody else tried that game though, Dame. So congratulations on that. He's not the same guy. He's not the same superstar as he was. This team lost a defensive edge by losing Drew Holiday, and the way that this defense has been all year, like Giannis has touched on it multiple times in interviews. And this is a real test for Giannis to see what kind of leader he is of this organization. He needs to pull Dame out of this doldrums. He needs to pull this team out of there. I mean, they're the third seed right now. They're only a game back from Cleveland, but we just mentioned a bunch of teams. I don't think any of us really think that if they got into a series with Boston, that we'd be confident in Milwaukee the way they're currently constructed. No. So I think it's a lot on Dame. I think it's a lot more on Dame than he's obviously going to mention for himself. But that's my biggest thing when I watch Milwaukee is that Damian Lillard does not look like Damian Lillard of old. And I don't know if it's A, just because he lost a step, or B, he has to share the ball and share that spotlight with Giannis and isn't used to that still for this first whole year. But it just hasn't looked the same this year. And I don't think we should expect him to – I don't think you should expect him to find the fountain of youth because that's not what happens with these small guards. It just typically doesn't work that way.
Do you agree, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, with Damian Lillard, what I was talking about the entire time of this years, I was like, Milwaukee doesn't realize the downgrade they're going to have on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that was the one thing when bringing Dame in was the big red flag for me is they just didn't realize the downgrade that was going to come from going from Drew Holiday to Damian Lillard. So we look at it now. I mean, Dame doesn't enjoy life in Milwaukee. It's like, well, it's kind of your fault. It's kind of your fault. And we know, like you said, like he probably still would rather be in Miami right now. And he's probably still doesn't want to be in Milwaukee. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can act like you're not enjoying life, but this is also kind of your fault, right? You and Giannis talked about this. You wanted to play with Giannis, like you made it known. And in my opinion, I look at this Milwaukee Bucks team. And unless Giannis plays out of his mind and really tries to take over games, I think there's a lot of pressure on Giannis too to feel like I got to make Dame happy. Every time Giannis talks about Damian Lillard, it's just loving Damian Lillard, right? Saying this is his team. I want him to take the ball at the end of the games. I want Dame to take over. Like Giannis wants to be the 1B to Dame 1A. That's not how this should work. Giannis, this is your team. And it just feels like I think Giannis is doing that to do whatever he can to make Dame happy. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's that meme, right? Where you have the guy walking with the girl and just turning her head and looking, and that's the Miami Heat. That's the Miami Heat. It's Giannis and the Bucks. And no matter what he could do for Damian Lillard, his sights have just always been elsewhere. And if you're not fully checked into a team, you're not going to win an NBA championship, especially when you're supposed to be the other superstar on this team. We're not talking about a role player here, right? We're talking about Damian Lillard. And I know, Jake, you said like he's kind of lost it, like he's lost the step. He doesn't really have it. I believe that a little bit, but I also think, too, there's a part of me that's like if Dame was fully checked in, I think it would be a little different. The one thing that obviously doesn't change is the defense, and I think that's something we always thought was going to happen.
It's so bad, man.
It's so bad. It's
glaring, too, because we were used to Drew Holiday on that team for a few years. And
it's
the only other thing I'd say about Dame's emotions, and, that's great that Giannis is backing him, and he wants the best for him.
I think Giannis doing whatever he can.
What is that doing to the rest of the team, though?
Right.
I mean, these guys had no like obligation to loving Jan or to loving Dame and to welcoming him with open arms. You know, I'm sure they did at first,
Yeah.
but this is a team that loved Drew Holiday,
Agree.
and they saw him walk out the door. Dame talked all summer about how he was only playing for Miami, ended up in Milwaukee. I see discourse every week about how Dame Lillard and Brook Lopez don't get along. There's guys on TikToks who break down specific plays and sets that the Bucks get in, and you can clearly see that Dame and Brook aren't on the same page a lot. So I think Dame, you know, of course we feel for him if he's going through stuff off the court. You know, we never want that for anyone, but these are things that affect the rest of the team too. And they see their 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call Dame on this Bucks team. Obviously, we think he should be the 1B. But if the rest of your team sees your 1A or 1B kind of with a glum attitude and putting out these quotes to the media on a weekly basis, it's not the best for team morale. So, you know, Bucks seem to turn it around a little since the horrible start with Doc, but definitely a lot of questions that still need to be answered there. We are going to get into
stretch. They've got a stretch coming up. They play at Charlotte tomorrow night, so that should be easy. They play in Chicago on Friday night, and then home to the Clippers, at the Warriors, at the Lakers, at the Clippers, at the Kings, home to the Sixers, home to the Suns, at the Celtics. So we're going to learn a lot about the Milwaukee Bucks and their contendership in that 8-game stretch, even starting in Chicago Friday night, because that's always a crazy crowd. Chicago, Milwaukee, it'll be a raucous atmosphere there. It's a late game. It's 9:00 start here in Central Time. So it's going to be nice. And that's an 8-9 game stretch where we're going to learn a lot about the Bucks. So I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Love it, man. Yeah, we'll see with Milwaukee. I think that Celtics game you mentioned, I believe it's March 20th, somewhere around there.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that in a big way.
Yeah, they still got two matchups with the Celtics too. They play them fourth to last game of the year on April 9th as well. So
yeah, both those are going to be must-watch TV. We'll see with the Bucks. Before we get to the spirited MVP discussion, Jig, any words on the Strus buzzer beater from last night? I did text in the chat that I thought winner of the game should get the floor for at least a few moments. I know we don't have much time left. We're going to do this MVP talk. Give us a few words about the game last night.
Well, Steve is downtrodden very much about the Mavs performance last night, but I was ready to declare the Cavs dead in the water, going down 10 in the last couple of minutes before Max Strus turned into
scorched earth.
Yeah, scorched earth. Who I don't know. He became like Reggie Miller. I don't know what spirits
Tracy
took over
McGrady.
his body. Tracy McGrady. Yeah, honestly, it was absurd to see Strus. They were interviewing him after the game, and I'm sure Steve wasn't watching this. I was reveling on the Cavs broadcast, and they're interviewing Strus. They're like asking all these questions. He's like, I don't even know what happened. Like Don wasn't on the court. He would have taken the shot. He's like, I kind of blacked out during all the threes. Like Strus didn't even know what the fuck was going on in that moment. So listen, that's why, to break it down in the simplest terms, this is the reason the Cavs needed a guy like Max Strus. I was not happy about the signing, thought it was a little bit too much money, but this is the exact reason and exact role that he was needed and that this team needed, was a guy that he defended everybody in this game. He was on Kyrie for a couple possessions. He was on Luka. They were throwing everybody at Luka, really. But there was a lot of Strus on Luka, a lot of Dean Wade on Luka. But the reason that he's just another option, and that hot shooting is what they needed from that wing position, and it came through in the biggest moment. I don't think a team will ever hit I've never seen shit like that. The 6 threes in the last couple minutes is just absurd to get them back into that game. But before that, it was just a war the whole game. Like, it was a very well played game. I saw a tweet after that was like just a meme of Adam Silver saying the NBA playoffs are going to be a 15 of 28 series between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Dallas Mavericks. That's what that game felt like. Like, I would love to just see those teams be able to go at it for 7 games the way they matched up. But Strus is like the perfect role that they need, and going into the playoffs is exactly the type of guy they need. You see Isaac Okoro benefits from it too, because there's not as much pressure on him. He was shooting the ball well last night. His defense is still impressive on that side of the ball. But yeah, it was great to see from Strus. There's still some issues with Garland. He's He's just not in the flow of things yet.
Yeah, I think he's still working back to. That's such a tough thing to come back from.
And I'm in all these group chats and everything, and I'm saying all he needs. It's rough right now. He just needs to figure it out by April. Like this, let him work through it in March. If he's still in another month after playing 30 minutes consistently, looking like he is right now, and even the other night he had 20 points. He was 6 of 12 shooting. Like, what more do you want from him when you got all these guys? Like, the Cavs are not. Don is going to score his 30 because that's what Donovan Mitchell does. And the Cavs are balanced. Like, every night it's somebody different. Last night it's Strus getting 21. Niang will get 18 out of nowhere. Like, Allen will have his 25-point games. Mobley will have his 18-point games. You'll have the Karis LeVert 27-point games or something like that. Like, they have options that just go off everywhere. So
I know that all too well.
You do know that well. That was the Karis LeVert game. But yeah, Strus, it's just like, it was a great signing altogether, and it's what they need. And it was a good thing to see. Like, the shot itself, I was like yelling alone in my apartment, scared the shit out of my cats. I had no idea what to do. I was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
So, it was great though. It was a fun win, fun game. Glad I was watching live.
Me too. I mean, I don't think I would. Yeah, Steve doesn't have much to say about the game. I obviously was probably going to be watching that anyway because that was just one of the better matchups that was on besides, me tuning into the Celtics. But I had the Celtics on the big TV, that game on my laptop to the side, and I just started screaming when Strus hit it because I thought the game was done, and I had my laptop on mute, so my roommates had no idea what I was freaking out about. Just Max Strus hitting. What would you say was the second longest game winner ever?
Yeah, second longest game winner in NBA history. It's insane.
Incredible, man. It was a great game. Probably one of the best games of the year. And sorry, Steve.
It's fine. It's just one of those things where it's just like there's so many plays in that game. I'm like, if just one play went the other way, like you have Donovan Mitchell, like he banks in a 3, right? Like we talk about
if that shot didn't go, that game would have been
game. So if Kyrie doesn't step out of bounds first before passing it in, then we don't like. Yeah. There's just so many plays, and then I was going to say the one thing I said. There's so many people complaining about the refs. The refs just didn't call anything. There were contact against both teams that were uncalled. You had Josh Green's corner 3 where it looked like he got trucked. Then you have the play where Donovan Mitchell looks like he got tackled.
Yeah,
as the balls like they just weren't calling anything. So I'm not going to get mad at the calls there, but there's just so many little plays where it's like, oh, it could have gone the other way. And then the one thing too is like, everyone's going to talk about the Strus shot. We had a terrible pass into Luka where he somehow gets it around 2 Cavs defenders and then the no-look pass to P.J. Washington. Like, no one's going to ever remember that. But it's just like, I'm watching that game. I'm like, wow, that play was incredible too. Especially all the people like, oh, Luka's a ball hog, not going to get his teammates involved, which is the most lazy argument I've ever heard in my entire life. But all that to just be, swept away with the Max Strus 3. And I know, Jake, you want to see the Cavs win because, you want to see them beat a good team. You don't want the Cavs to be frauds. I think the Cavs have been one of the most impressive teams in the past couple months. But if you want to talk about who needed the win more, I mean, with the Mavs schedule coming up and the fact that the Western Conference, you can win one game and jump 3 spots in the playoffs, or you can lose one game and fall 3 spots, where the Cavs are kind of, at this point, feel like locked in for a top 4. We'll see. But that means at least one home playoff series, right?
Yeah.
We'll see 2 to 4. The way they keep playing, looks like they'll be the 2. But just to have a game like that, just your heart ripped out, where it was like the Mavs need this win. Need it. Mm-hmm. And to lose that way,
that was the craziest, and that's why I understand exactly why you feel like this, because it was such a roller coaster at the end. Like, the Cavs threw the game away. Like, they had a lead. All they had to do was inbound, go to the line, and shoot free throws. And Garland gets tackled. That should have been a foul. He should have been taking shots there. And then they turn the ball over there. And I'm like, well, fuck, Luka's going to do some shit. He does do it. They have no timeouts left because the Cavs they're yelling and calling, using their timeouts about that. And then Strus takes that shot. And I like, you're looking at it as it's in the air. You're like, damn, it kind of, it's like,
it looks kind of,
like, it looks like it's in the air. I'm like, it's going to hit something. Yeah. And then still, you don't believe that that's going to happen. And so, yeah. The margins are thin. It was a great game. Those 2 teams are very evenly matched. But that's a great point about the standings. The Cavs really don't need that win in the standings right now. And the Mavs sitting in the 8th seed right now. And they could be at the 5.
Desperate.
Yeah. The Cavs stretch coming up
in the West. Every game matters in the West right now. You can't have one slip-up game. So
the Cavs stretch coming up, their schedule is definitely tougher this second half of the season. That they're in Chicago tonight, in Detroit Friday night, and then Sunday evening, Cavs Knicks. Tuesday night, Cavs Celtics, both in Cleveland. So a couple big games for the Cleveland Cavaliers fan and contendership and everything else. The Mavs, as you were talking about, Steve, they're on a killer stretch right now. They're finishing
Toronto
out this East
tonight,
Coast
Boston
swing.
Friday, right?
Then hosting Philly, hosting Indy, hosting Miami before coming back up here, and they go Detroit, Boston themselves. So it's a nice little stretch.
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon against the Sixers too, so that'll be a fun game. But
Mavs, Cavs. It was an exciting one last night. All right, guys. Spirited MVP debate. We're gonna end the episode with this. This is how I kind of wanted to do it. I mean, last week I think we were
okay. JBC. Okay, got a Bulls fan chirping. Worry about beating the Trae Young-less Hawks. All right.
Last week before
I'm taking the Hawks, JBC. I changed my mind from earlier, so I'm taking the Hawks. I'm taking the
support,
Hawks.
JBC.
You're done.
Right, just like that.
Last week, the reason this segment came to light was because we were talking in our group chat and we were saying just how bullshit the MVP power rankings have been every week. There's no consistency from the league. Giannis was above Luka and Tatum for a while when they were losing all those games, and Luka obviously is putting up video game numbers every night. Tatum continues to do his thing as the best team in the league, or as the best player on the best team in the league. This got brought about by frustration mostly from us really not having consistency with MVP power rankings. I want to pose this to you guys, though. We go all year, and us included, we say, is this guy in the MVP discussion? Like guys like Jalen Brunson or Domantas Sabonis, those guys aren't going to win the MVP this year. There's always the discussion of guys, and in reality, there's only a few guys who can actually win it. We're in the final stretch right now. I even think I might have too many. I only think there's 4 people who could win the MVP right now. I want to know how many guys you guys think could actually win it right now and who they are. You got 3, Steve. I had 3 before, but I have
3.
a 4th.
And then one of them, people are going to get very upset that I don't have in my top 3.
Tatum's missing?
Tatum's not in the top 3. There's another one that's not in the top 3. The first one is Nikola Jokic. It's obvious, right? And I will admit that I was very upset with how Jokic's odds moved after the Nuggets 3-game losing streak, right? That's what started this discussion, Donnie, in our group chat. This is what started, is that I was very upset that the odds moved benefiting him. He was like minus 105. Then he was like minus 150. I'm like, Nuggets are on a 3-game losing streak. Why is Jokic becoming more and more favored when he's having not a down year, but not the statistical year that he had pretty much in his other MVP seasons, or even the year where he finished runner-up to Joel Embiid? So I was like, why does he keep getting favored? And then we saw what Jokic has done since the All-Star break. Now, granted, the Nuggets have played the cupcake of all cupcake schedules coming out of the All-Star break. I'm not going to say the world beaters. I think they played Charlotte and Portland. I don't even remember all 3 teams, but he's putting up absurd numbers since the All-Star break. So I get it. I understand it. I think he should be favored right now. Nikola Jokic has just kind of done his thing with the efficiency rates, with everything. I understand it. I get it. Jokic is absolutely in the top 3. My biggest, I guess, not necessarily complaint with Jokic, but my feeling with Jokic is these other players, Giannis, Tatum, you put Luka in there, they get punished for bad games. They get punished in the MVP ladder or the odds when they have a down game, right? Maybe they don't shoot too well. Jokic has had his fair share of down games this year. Like Jokic has had out of his mind, insane, like it looks like video game type numbers games. He had the one game where he went 10 of 10 with a triple double, I believe. Like he's had those type of games. I get
the game Sunday against the Warriors. 32, 16, 16, and 4 steals. Like that's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, no, he's been playing out of his mind lately. He had, I know it's the Wizards and the Blazers, but the Wizards, 10 of 10 shooting, 21 points, 19 rebounds, 15 assists.
Yeah.
That's a video game. Against the Blazers, I know it's the Blazers, 29 points, 12 of 17 shooting, 15 rebounds, 14 assists. And then, like you said, the Warriors game was probably better than those two. And that was the actual decent opponent he played coming out of the All-Star break. So I get it. My whole thing with Jokic, why I got upset, is I just feel like he doesn't get punished for his bad games like other players do. That's all I'll say on that. But obviously, the MVP discussion starts with Nikola Jokic. Just what he does is incredible, coming off the NBA championship last year and 2 MVPs beforehand. You can't have an MVP discussion in the past 5 seasons without Nikola Jokic. That says a lot about the guy as a basketball player. Number 2 in the MVP ladder is Luka Doncic. And I don't get the odds. I don't get how SGA is plus 225 and Luka's plus 700. Luka is putting up video game numbers himself, right? He's getting punished because the Mavs are the 8 seed, because the Mavs record isn't the same of these top teams. But there's no consistency, and I'll get into that later, of where teams are ranked and the MVP ladder. There's just no consistency across the board with that. Also, too, no one wants to mention, and I sent you guys this tweet but before the All-Star break, that in terms of starters or guys who should be regular starters, games missed this year, none of the other MVP candidates are even close to the games Luka's starters have missed. Exum, Lively, Kyrie, etc. He was playing with Dwight Powell. We know my feelings on Dwight Powell. He's playing with Dwight Powell. People want to talk about his defense. He improved that significantly this year. He's been top 10 in on-ball defense. He's been top 10 in efficiency defense. We're talking about, he has, I think, the highest passes that should be assists. He's 3rd in the NBA, I believe, in assists. He leads the NBA in scoring. People want to talk about the efficiency shooting. That has only gotten better as the season's gone on. Last night, I know Max Strus stole the spotlight, but Luka had 45, 9, and 14 on very, very good shooting numbers. Also, I think he had 3 or 4 steals, played great defense. And he's also, too, I get the usage rate is high. But yeah, the usage rate is going to be high if you're a 6'7" point guard that, moves the offense through you. But don't try to tell me that this guy's a ball hog. If you watch a Mavs game, he's just passing guys open. It just happens to be Josh Green and Tim Hardaway. That's
a lazy argument against Luka. I'll give you that for sure.
Super lazy argument. And I understand the team success. People want to complain, but let's not forget when Jokic won his first MVP, right? Let's not forget how some of these other superstars that have won MVPs, Giannis, Curry, Jokic, started their career. Let's not forget that when we're talking about these guys, some of them are 3-4 years older than Luka. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Luka, 25 years old. I got to say happy birthday to Luka. And Luka has put up historic numbers before turning 25. You know the guy he gets mentioned with all the time of the numbers he puts up or his ranks, LeBron James. Ever heard of him? Yeah, he's a pretty good basketball player. That's the conversation he's been in from the start of his career. So people are acting like Luka is this been not washed, but they're acting like, oh, he's been around. He can't win. It's dude, he just turned 25. But yet you want to talk about a guy who's a year older and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 26, like he's 18 years old and he's leading a team of bums. And I'll get to him later because he's not even in my MVP discussion because I have Jokic at 1, I have Luka at 2, and the only other person, this is no disrespect to Jason Tatum, Dunny, and I will tell you why I don't have him in my top.
It is disrespect.
It's not. The only other person that I think can win the NBA MVP this year is Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the reason I will say that, no, don't shake your head at me. Don't shake your head at me.
That's crazy, bro.
The reason I will say that, the reason why I'll say he's the only other person I think can win, I don't think he's going to win. I think it's a 2-horse race. But I'm putting Giannis in there because if the Milwaukee Bucks are going to turn their season around and get hot, it's going to be on the back of Giannis putting up Giannis MVP type numbers. If the Milwaukee Bucks want to be the 2 seed, if the Milwaukee Bucks want to be a team that, when we've seen this, we saw this last year with Joel Embiid. Everyone's like, it's Jokic, 3-peat Jokic. NBA's just going to kind of give it to Embiid, right? They're just going to try to give it to him. He doesn't deserve it. It's Jokic. And then Embiid puts up what kind of numbers? Philly has what kind of post All-Star break success? Insane. That's where I think Giannis can do that, where Tatum can't, because his team's too good. It's just too good. Giannis, the Bucks. We talked about it earlier this episode that the Bucks, like, we don't know if Dame's fully checked in. We don't know if he wants to be in Milwaukee. The Bucks have been inconsistent up and down. How does that change? And Giannis is one of only maybe 3-4 players in the NBA capable of this to put up 40, 15, and 10. That's how it changes. And I'll tell you what, those are eye-popping numbers. And if Milwaukee's team gets better, right? Doc Rivers, he ain't getting the credit. Dame Lillard ain't getting the credit. What, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton? No, they're going to give it to Giannis, right? So that's the only reason I think Giannis can be third in the NBA MVP discussion in my mind. Because I think if the Milwaukee Bucks make that charge, right? I'll tell you what, Dunny, like, even if they don't get the 1 seed, but if the Bucks are the hottest team in the next month and a half or whatnot, and they catch like 4 or 5 games on the Celtics, Giannis is going to be right up there in the talks. I promise you that right now.
I don't hate that. I think, that's dependent on if that happens. That's the only thing.
Exactly. And that's why I'm saying I think he's the only one. You posed the question is who we think can win the award, right? And that's where I'm going with it. I think that is the path for Giannis winning the award. Now, and I'm also saying I'm ruling injuries out of the question, right? I'm not going to do, oh, well, if so and so gets hurt, this guy can win. I don't care about that. If everyone stays healthy, I think there's only 3 players that have a path to win the MVP. The Mavs would have to be team success because everyone just wants to blame Luka. The Bucks would have to be Giannis, like I said, putting up those video game type numbers and making the Milwaukee Bucks look like, oh, the Milwaukee Bucks again. And Jokic is just like, just keep doing what you. I mean, I'm telling you guys right now, as much as I love Luka, as much as I think he's having the best season in the NBA right now, if Jokic just keeps putting up 25, 15, and 15, there's no counter argument. On 80% shooting since the All-Star. There's no counter argument. There's no.
I do have a weird argument against it, and this was what I was going to bring up for you. Jokic, by the way, is one of my 4 players that
has to be.
My weird argument, and this was it sucked because Jokic had that game against the Warriors since then, but this was going to be my argument last week, and I don't think it's fair necessarily. I'm wondering if voters in the NBA are getting a little sick of how little Jokic cares about basketball.
Yeah.
Well, because the MVP seasons where it's like, are we really going to give this guy a third one? Like, we know how good he is, but it was getting a little stale then. Then after the post game interviews where he's like, they said you've scored 30 against every other team except for the Nuggets. He didn't care. The offseason, he didn't seem to really care that the Nuggets had won the championship. He just wanted to be with his horses, which is great. But does Adam Silver think that's great? No. Do voters think that's great? Probably not. So I think if it's tight enough towards the end of the year, I think that's a knock on Jokic that people aren't really looking at. So I'll say that about Jokic. Jake, how many guys do you got? I got 4. Steve's got 3. How many guys do you have that could actually win it, you think?
I'm with Steve on his Giannis argument because the narratives always build up in March, especially like we've seen the MVP flip in March. I think it happened with Embiid last year. I think it was Jokic is going to win again. Jokic is going to win again. And then it was like, now we got to give it to Embiid. I really think it's Jokic or nothing at this point. I think that on the opposite side of your argument, I think the voters are ready to solidify Jokic as the guy of this little generation that they have. And that's why he's been the favorite so far, because he's just been himself, and that's enough because he is just not far and away, but he is clearly the best player in the league and has been for a stretch now, and I think they're going to reward him by that. And that's why I think it's going to be Jokic. I think Doncic, if the Mavs go on a crazy run and get to the 4 seed or 3 seed, I think Luka gets into those places. I think SGA ends up like second in voting because he gets all the second place votes. No one's going to vote him first over these guys. Like, that's how the voting is going to break down, is Jokic, Giannis, these other guys will get all the first place votes, and SGA will get lifted up by his placing in the votes. But I think it's Jokic or nothing at this point. I really think it's going to be him at the end of the year if he keeps it up.
I think that's fair because, like I said, as much as I love Luka and want him, I think Jokic right now is the favorite. I'd pull Luka second. But here's the thing, and I don't know if he's in your list, Dunny. You haven't got to all 4. I'm sure SGA is probably one of the names in there. Yeah, my question to you, my question to you, and this is where I don't understand it. I don't understand it. And I get it. SGA gets praised for it feels like everything he does for the success of this Thunder team, right? For how good the Thunder have been. SGA gets all the praise, right? He gets all the love, all of it. Oh, the Thunder are so good. They're tied for first in the West. Look at this team. Look at what SGA is doing. Look at the efficiency he's doing it with. I'm posing this question to you, Donnie. Why is SGA getting all the praise when a guy like Tatum on a much better team is getting punished for it? That's where I can't put SGA in the MVP conversation, because if I do that, then I got to throw Tatum in there. Then I got to throw Anthony Edwards in there. I know Anthony Edwards hasn't had the efficiency, but it's like you're so inconsistent where everyone's giving SGA so much praise because of the Thunder's team success, right? When anyone talks about SGA and MVP talks, they'll bring up his stats. His stats don't compare to Jokic. His stats don't compare to Luka. His stats are on par, besides the points, with kind of everything else, with about 5-6 other guys in this conversation. For hell, I could say Domantas Sabonis has better stats than SGA. Just the way, right? If we're going by strictly numbers. But if we're talking about team success, then you got to be consistent with team success. You can't try to tell me that SGA is plus 220 to win the NBA MVP, where Luka's plus 700, Giannis is 1,400, and Tatum's 40 to 1. You can't. Yeah. If you want to put SGA to plus 225, Tatum's got to be plus 170. Like, you can't try to tell me that SGA has better odds than Tatum. But then if you want to go by stats, if you want to go stats primarily first, then team success second, then it's Luka Jokic and the conversation's over. It's those two guys. So there's no reason in my mind why SGA should be this high. It just feels like bias that they want to put SGA in that conversation. So they're doing whatever they can, and they're using the Thunder in first place as a prime example. Chet Holmgren's back, by the way. He wasn't there last year. Jalen Williams was one of the most impressive rookies. The Thunder have a great team. You're giving him credit for a great team. Yes, but that's the thing. But we're punishing Jason Tatum because he doesn't play half the fourth quarters. Because you have Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday.
Averaging 30 points a game is a marker that voters love, and he's averaging 31, man. Well, 31 to 27 throughout a year.
Giannis is averaging 30, 11, and 6 on 61% shooting. He should be higher than SGA if we want to go with that.
I agree with that. But you were talking, if you were talking about Tatum and SGA, I think that's the difference. It's 31 to 27. And
I also
the fact that on the MVP
the reason it's 27 is because the Celtics are 35 in the fourth quarter in half these games.
MVP
Give me the per 36. Give me the per 36 numbers. SGA is placing 25-point blowouts just to get the 31 points every game. It's absurd.
On the award tracker on Pro Basketball References tracker, where they base it on the model for previous voting results, Porzingis is 9th in MVP voting. So I think that takes away as much from Tatum as much as anything else. No offense, Dunny, the Tatum we're really talking about it, it's a 4-person race of those 4 guys, and I think that would be acceptable. I don't think I'd put Tatum in there because that starting lineup is so strong. Yes, SGA's starting lineup is strong too, but it's not the same level as Drew Holiday, Derek White, Porzingis.
But the reason Tatum doesn't have SGA numbers is because of that lineup, because of their team success. So
so then how is he most valuable if he has a better lineup?
But that's what I'm saying. We're being inconsistent. We're being inconsistent when it comes to team success. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's a full answer to your inconsistency question, but the way I see it, comparing the Thunder to the Celtics teams, is no one expected this. Steve, I know you expected it from the Thunder this year.
I had him in the fight. No. Don't say no one.
No, that's what I said. I'm giving you credit. But I'm saying I think voters and the rest of the league, like, no one expected the Thunder to be this good. And then I will say we got to give SGA credit at some point. He averages over 2 steals a game and 0.9 blocks a game. So I think people see the offensive numbers for SGA and they're like, oh, he's a 31-point scorer. We're going to give him the MVP for that. He plays hard on both ends.
And
I'm not taking that away. I'm not taking away. But so does Giannis.
He shoots 55% from the field, and he shoots a good amount of threes and from the outside in general, mid-range. So the percentage is impressive. The defense is impressive, and I don't think And I'm not trying to make the argument against Tatum here, but I think the expectation of the Celtics was way up here.
I agree.
I think the expectation of the Thunder was a little more middle of the pack. I think
But
that's where he gets the nod.
But if we're doing expectations, look, no one thought the Timberwolves were going to be near the top of the West.
Yeah, I don't think it's consistent either. I'm just saying.
I'm asking you this right now, and I know the efficiency isn't there. I know it isn't there. If Anthony Edwards was averaging 30 points a game, you think he'd be in the MVP conversation?
Yes.
I'd have to look at everything else, but
probably, right? So that's my whole point, is it's just like, they're like, we didn't expect the Thunder to be as good, so we have to say they're not. You could just say they're a good team, and everyone's good. Like, SGA is fantastic. I think he's a phenomenal player. SGA is not putting up the numbers that Jokic and Luka are. Honestly, the numbers that Giannis are putting up right now. And we're saying that Giannis has to do more to get in that conversation. But SGA is already there. And that's my whole thing, is then people are going to be like, well, Tatum's not putting up those numbers. So, well, Tatum's 40-1. SGA is 2 plus 225. But also, too, Tatum's getting punished because of his good team, where SGA is getting rewarded. I don't understand that, because Anthony Edwards, no one wants to talk about him, but we want to talk about how good the Timberwolves are going to be, right? Mm-hmm. But it makes, and then Luka always getting punished because he's been playing with backups for a third of the season. Like, I just, in my head, I don't understand it. I wish there was more consistency, and I think it should be a combination of team success and the players' pure ability and the numbers they put up. I really do. But I feel like we've gotten to the point in the NBA where it's like an agenda at this point, where what they want to see. And I'll tell you this right now, and this might be being a little sour because of how the media treats Luka, but I'll tell you guys this right now. From when I think it was this past week, when Luka and the Mavs won, I forget who they beat. The Suns. When the Mavs beat the Suns, the first day the NBA was back, right? TNT covered that game. And they showed the highlights, and they kind of reacted to it, right? Forget who the Thunder beat. I can't remember who. I think it might have been the Clippers. I think it was the Clippers. They were oohing and on every single SGA play. They showed about 3 clips from the Mavs game, and they were like, like Mavs played well, blah blah blah. They were oohing and on every single play SGA made, and I feel like there's just an agenda right now, and I'm not trying to say this is the reason, but I don't think they want a foreign player to, like, even though SGA is Canadian, but I'm saying that they don't want those Eastern Europeans that look like they don't care about basketball. That's what I think.
I think that's a great point from the media perspective. Do you also think that it has something to do with Kyrie Irving being on his team? I really think Kyrie has a lot to do with the team narrative around the Mavs all year long, because there's still a lot of, like, Kyrie's been on his best behavior this year, everything else.
He's been fantastic this year.
Of vitriol. Even last night he said he apologized to Cavs fans last night, apologized to Cleveland, said sorry for the way it went down.
We didn't get that in Boston, bro.
Well, I don't think you guys are getting that.
I don't think you'll ever get an apology from Kyrie in Boston, Donnie. That ship is gone.
That ship's sailed. I didn't know he apologized to the Cavs last night, bro.
But I do think Kyrie plays into the national narrative around the Mavs as much as anything else. People aren't going to outright attack Kyrie anymore, because there's no reason to at the moment, but they're just waiting for the moment that Kyrie does something ridiculous to jump back on it. And that's fair about Kyrie specifically.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point, but I think it goes more than just Kyrie and the Mavs. Like, I really do think they don't want these Eastern Europeans to continue to win. In my opinion, I really don't. And I know Jokic is favored, but the way the odds are set up, the way they've been talking about it, it feels like they want SGA. They want SGA to just get to the point where he can leap Jokic.
They're trying to create a new super duper star, and they're hoping that it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and especially going into the Olympics and all the attention that's going to be on.
But I don't get that.
Ant is not a guy. He's not a guy that's easy to market.
I agree there.
He's not a guy that's easy to market the way that team is, and his.
He kind of has the I don't give a shit attitude, like Jokic a little bit.
They do.
Exactly.
No, I'm saying all three do.
The league loves the Thunder are their pet project, bro. We're talking about small markets. That's by far the smallest market in all of like professional sports, besides like Buffalo, New York. There's nothing else going on there, and I feel like they have done a lot to boost that up too. So I'm here. We'll just have to come back to as it develops with the ladder coming out and everything. It's gonna be an interesting March to see how this plays out.
If you had to predict
Closing.
right now who wins, are we all going Jokic?
Oh, it's if Jokic is winning if he stays doing this. I think they're just picking Jokic.
I think it's Jokic too, Donnie.
Not picking SGA, bro.
Oh my God. I'm off. I'm off the pod. I'm done.
That's not
So,
a troll,
nah.
bro.
Nah.
I didn't want to even say that after you. I was gonna say that at the beginning. I didn't know how strong your anti-SGA was. It's the defense. It's the defense and shooting percentage.
But
for me,
Giannis is better defensively and putting up better numbers.
But to me, he hasn't. Their team hasn't been as impressive. I think they should. I mean, as of late, kind of breaking the mold. I don't know. Something about SGA. I didn't have the Thunder expectations that you had. The shooting percentage.
I get the expectations. I get that. SGA's
and
3.5. His team is 3.5 games better than Milwaukee.
Over 2 steals a game.
It does get talked about. What do you mean it doesn't get talked about?
I don't think
it's
I don't hear about it.
all over. That's all they talk about is SGA's on-ball defense.
Okay, let me have my finishing thoughts here. So my 4, I actually don't know if I would have SGA first. I'd probably have Jokic first. I think that's fair. But I do think SGA needs some credit for the shooting percentage and defense. I'm going to keep honing on that, or pounding that point. My 4 are SGA, Jokic, Luka, and Tatum. I do think Tatum still has an argument. I do think he's live for it.
What's his argument? If you were to pose a Tatum MVP argument to me right now, how would you construct it?
Okay, I wanted to say this stat about the Celtics anyway, but I'm going to twist it into a MVP Tatum stat also.
I like it.
Listen to this, guys. I gotta pull up my likes here because I found it on Twitter earlier. Well, first, something that I want to read stats because he's the best player on the best team, right? He also, and I'm sure Luka, Jokic, they're probably similar in this category, but I think this helps Tatum's point more because of how good his team is, like you were saying, Steve.
Right.
Best player on the best team averages 27, 8.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal a game. He leads the Celtics in points, rebounds, assists, and he's tied for the most steals when you have the best defensive backcourt on your team. He has Derek White and Drew Holiday on his team, and he's tied for the most steals on top of having the most rebounds when he has a 7'2" guy in the starting lineup with him and for the most assists. I know Luka probably holds all those for the Mavs too, right? Maybe not the steals, but I'm sure he
leads the Mavs in steals too.
Oh yeah, because the defensive numbers are up for Luka this year too. So I'm sure that's all the same, right? But I think it deserves some more light that he leads the Celtics in all of those because of how good the rest of his team is. So that's one thing. This is more just how good the Celtics are stat, but I think it plays into the best player on the best team. So last night with their win and the Nets loss in Orlando, the Celtics on February 27th, that was last night, clinched a spot in the play-in tournament. If they lose their final 24 games, the Celtics still make the play-in.
That's crazy.
So they could lose out from here and still have a shot at the playoffs. I think that's obviously a testament to how good the starting five is. We keep talking about that. I think that's a testament to the best player on the best team, though. And I think I think a lot of people would disagree with this. I think if you take Tatum away from the Celtics team, I know their starting five would still be very, very good. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're a top 3 seed in the East. Maybe not even top 4 seed in the East if they don't have Tatum on this. I really don't, man. I think if you
the way the East is this year too.
I guess, yeah. I didn't expect the way it started, right? With the way the Pacers were playing, you had more expectations from Miami and Milwaukee. That's a good point. Probably not right now. I think they'd still probably be a top 3 seed. But I don't think it gets talked about enough how important Tatum just being out there is. I don't know the stats, but I'd be willing to guess he's top 3, maybe top 5 in hockey assists in the league. Like, he's just so important to the success of this group. He does everything at every level. And, obviously I said there's 4 guys that could win it for a reason. I don't think – I'm not saying all these things about Tatum and don't think that is true for the other guys that we talked about. I think that is true. I just think the 46-12, and if they win 65 games, which is what they're on pace for now, I think it'd be hard not to give him a strong consideration.
That's my, I guess, counterpoint is, don't you think it's more likely he gets punished than rewarded if the Celtics have that many wins, just because it's like the team's too good? And here's my biggest pushback with Tatum. and I'll even give SGA credit here. SGA, Luka, Jokic, you can put in there a little bit. Giannis, depending on what Dame does that game, even like other guys down the list. Fourth quarter comes around and it's like they got to go off. We have seen, Dunny, multiple Celtics games this year where Derek White takes over the fourth quarter, Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown as of late. I know Jaylen Brown has been a first half warrior in most of the games, but he's had his moments too. And it's just like with the Celtics, like, because they're so talented, like even the Thunder, where Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren are great. The Mavs, Kyrie Irving's great. Nuggets, Jamal Murray's great. In those close games in the fourth quarter, the reason they usually win those games is because of SGA, because of Luka, because of Jokic. With the Celtics, it's more like, oh no, Derek White scored 16 in the fourth tonight. Porzingis was 6 of 6, scored 15. Jaylen Brown, like Tatum, and I'm not saying Tatum doesn't. Tatum has it. I just feel like it's more spread out. That's all.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with Tatum for me is if you just look at counting stats, the simplest thing of the top 4 guys, he's averaging 27, which Giannis, Luka, SGA are averaging 30. Jokic is only averaging 26, but he's averaging damn near a triple-double, which Tatum is. He's got his 8.5 rebounds, which is crazy to be doing, but he only has the 5 assists. And then the field goal percentage, Luka's the only other one shooting under 50%. Tatum's shooting 47%, but Luka's shooting 38% from 3. Tatum's shooting 36% from 3. If he was at 50% and at 29 points, I think he'd be higher in this. And I think that the margins are slim, and it's like. But
do you think if Tatum was at 30, he'd be ahead of SGA? He would be the second guy. You think?
I do. Because I think it's such a tight. I think it's such a tight race that you have to that the voting and the ladder is splitting those margins really thin because it's like Donnie, your argument for Tatum, like that's sound. Like if you want to take that and run with it, people can argue with it, but it's fair. Like it's completely fair to have those guys. Even the guys underneath him on the Pro Basketball Reference, like are Sabonis, Mitchell, Halliburton. Like in other years, those are guys that are in MVP, not like to win, but in the top discussion for top 5, top 4, top 3. And they're not going to be near that this year. And it's just a credit to how good this race is, really.
Can I just say one last thing? It doesn't have to do with Tatum, but I just want to say the reason I don't have SGA in my top 3. The main reason is I just think it would take a collapse from the Nuggets and the Mavs, where I feel like if the Nuggets start to slow down and the Mavs play better, then I think Luka gets very highly considered in the MVP talks. Whereas I don't think the Nuggets fall off, though. That's the problem, right? So you want to go on team success and everything. It's like if the Nuggets are just below the Thunder, Jokic is going to.
I really think it's a race for number 2 that we're arguing about mostly because Jokic averaging damn near a triple double, and if that team's a top 3 seed, he's winning that because he's the best player of this generation. They're going to cement that.
He's like 29 points, 15 rebounds, 15 assists post All-Star break.
It's nuts. It's nuts. And he's like, there's an argument to say like we're going to be talking about the 2010s into the 2020s, and it's going to be LeBron, Steph, and then Jokic. Like that's where we're at this point with the last 15 years of basketball. So
the last thing I want to say has nothing to do with Tatum. Has nothing to do with really anyone individually. It's the same thing I said about every year we get more and more snubs in the All-Star game. You can chalk this whole conversation up, the whole MVP conversation up to it's how fucking good the league is, man. Yeah. There's so many guys like Perkins. It's funny that I'm using Kendrick Perkins. I just saw this while we were recording, though. He was, saying, why isn't Domantas Sabonis talked about more? It's
how
fair.
is he not an All-Star?
It's the same thing, right? It's what I just said. There's snubs. There's guys that should probably be higher.
Shooting 62% from the field.
But there's just only so many names.
Has been unbelievable.
There's just only so many names. There's only so many spots. There's only so many words and minutes on these talk shows that you can get in. And I just think that's how talented our favorite league is. And that's where we're at. I think this is only going to be a harder award to give out every year. I think the All-Star game is only going to get harder to make selections, and it's great for the league, and it makes for some spirited MVP debates like we had today. So that's it for me. I mean, we've been going for a while here. I know Jake has to run too. Do you guys have any last closing things?
No, I think that's all I got. I'm excited to see how this goes because, like I said, I just want to see consistency when it comes to the NBA MVP ladder, especially. I just want to see if some teams falter down the line or some teams get better, if that actually truly changes MVP odds. And you're right, Donny. I think, if we see the Celtics get into the mid 60 wins, Tatum should move up, right? Regardless. So we'll see. Also, too, we're talking about these MVP talks, right? A lot of these teams are going to play each other in the next 2-3 weeks. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see it. And we're getting close. We're almost at playoff basketball. Yeah. So we're almost there. I'm ready for the end of this season. As long as Jason Kidd doesn't screw it up and play Daniel Gafford 7 minutes. But all right, we're done.
It's great, man. This episode is great. I'm glad we got to get to our spirited MVP debate. I didn't even tell you guys about this, but I might have a new segment I'm gonna introduce next week on the show. So maybe that's our thing. Maybe we'll start giving the listeners teasers at the end of every episode. We teased MVP conversation. I'm gonna have a new segment for next week. And that's going to do it for Happy Hour Hoops. Thank you again to our wonderful sponsor, WinStreaks. Shout out to the user, Dez dropped it, who won the $10 game time gift card. Don't forget to use our code HHH when you go and download the WinStreaks app. 5 picks per day, 100% free to play. You accumulate points based off your picks, and then you start winning cash prizes. 100 players win cash prizes every week. So shout out to WinStreaks. Use our code HHH when you sign up, and shout out to Trainwreck Sports for making this possible for us. That's Happy Hour Hoops. That's the WinStreaks app. If you're watching on YouTube, Jake is showing you. Later, guys.